Welcome to the program, Babe Winkelman, who you really need no introduction, but for those who maybe haven't been living outside of a cave, one of the premier outdoor enthusiasts. We know him from all his television years, over a quarter of century in television outdoor adventure. Welcome to the program, Babe.
Oh, Mike, my pleasure, man. Thank you.
You know, there's a lot of shows out there, and there's a lot of sponsorships out there now as the hunting and fishing industry has grown, but you were there right at the beginning. And how hard was it to get a show off the ground?
Well, it was difficult. I mean, I started with television, Mike, before cable existed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for years we ran on, like in Chicago, I've run on WBBM, WMS, or WLS, WMAQ, WFLD, and for years on WGN. You know, at first the stations used us as a sports filler. Our program came on so cotton-picking strong that we had stations fighting over it.
Right. Right.
Because there was nothing like it in the country. You know, and for a lot of people in a lot of markets, I was the only outdoor show that they got for quite a few years. But, you know, for me, I did cheapers. I had never thought about getting into television until I wound up doing those TV commercials for Deep Woods Off back in '78. And when I got done, they said, you ought to get in television. It was the first time the thought had ever even entered my mind, and I had no idea what to do.
Let's go back to your childhood, the first time you went fishing, the first time you went hunting. Let's talk about when the seed was planted in a Babe Winkelman.
1955, my father moved to a farm that we're just in the process now of selling the last of it off with his estate. My father passed away last year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we moved to this farm. I had just turned 6. We moved there in May, and I'd turned 6 at the end of April. And there was a creek there, a big active creek. It was in spring, and the second day or third day that we were there, I was standing on the bridge. I'd never seen a flowing water before, you know. It was just a cool deal. And I looked down, and I could see some striped fish swimming around. And I had no idea what they were. The only striped fish I'd ever heard of, and I don't even know how I heard of that, was the striped marlin.
Okay.
So I run up to the house, and I told Dad that there were a bunch of striped marlin down there, and he had to get me some kind of a fishing pole so I could catch them. And he rigged me up when I went back those days. There were like 4.5-foot long steel rods. Reels you couldn't cast 10 feet with. But we made it work, and worms and a bobber and so forth, and they were striped suckers. But I didn't know, and I didn't care.
Right.
And it was just a hoot, and it's been a hoot ever since.
It doesn't.
I mean,
go
I can
away.
still remember standing on that bridge, catching that first one, thinking, "My God." You know, I mean, it was when you're a little kid like that. It was a giant fish, and really wasn't that big, but it sure felt like it.
There is something that draws children into participating in nature. That if you give them the chance, it'll stay there for life. And I know I can speak for Babe Winkelman. When you hook into a nice fish today, or when you see a deer come into your tree stand, it's the same excitement you had when you were a kid, if not more so.
If I ever lose that, you'll never see me on the air again.
Right.
And I never will lose it. I mean, a lot of people find things that they like or do things casually as a hobby and so forth. This isn't that for me. This is every cell and every piece of fiber in my body loves the outdoors more than anything. When I get started in the business, I had 6 corporations and 197 employees. And a guy told me in 1974, he said, "Don't learn how to earn, man, learn how to live. Your lifestyle is what makes you wealthy, not what you get." And I thought about that for 2 weeks, and I thought, you know, this going after the American dream, getting a pile of money is stupid, because I'd hated what I was becoming, you know. It was all work. And I'd been fishing tournaments already and guiding for years and so forth, and I just come home one day, and I told the wife, I said, I'm going to sell all the businesses and get into fishing and the outdoors. And she said, doing what? And I said, I really don't know, because I didn't, you know, there was no living in it. I just didn't give a damn.
Right. I'm going to fish.
You know, I grew up on a farm with no money, man. If that wasn't so bad, I have wonderful childhood memories. The amount of money we had didn't count, and I figured, well, the worst that can happen, I wind up flat broke again.
Right, but you'll be
Which
fishing.
I did.
Right. So you did. And so here's the entrepreneur in you. You say, you know what, I love to fish. I love to be outside. I love to be in the outdoors. I'm going to make this a living. And then what happened?
I started. I moved to Brainerd on the recommendation of a couple of friends. I bought half interest in a wholesale bait and tackle business, and 5 months later, he had every penny but $2,000 I owned. He filed bankruptcy on me while I was at a tournament in Texas. Make a long story short, you know, I mean, that was what I was going to start doing up here while I was expanding in the outdoors. I filed for unemployment, and I got 13 weeks of it, hadn't found anything, went back for an extension, and they said they felt I'd been making too much money prior to moving to Brainerd, that I was unhireable in the Brainerd community. They denied my 13-week extension and recommended I find a different community to live in.
Oh.
So, I mean, I was pretty well right down to the bottom. I had $2,000 left, and that was it. And a wife that started working, and I started doing everything you can imagine.
Right.
I mean, I was writing for magazines, writing for newspapers, doing seminars, all kinds of crap. And every day in between that, I'd be on the road for Lindy Tackle doing promotions.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get $25 a day plus 3 cents a mile for supplying my own boat and truck and all my own fishing equipment. They provided all the terminal tackle, all the bait. They'd give me $15 a day for food and up to $25 a day for hotel. And I'd go on the road and I'd go lake to lake, retailer to retailer, and go into like Richmond, Virginia, and Chris Ford and Sons was the biggest tackle store in Richmond, and take the owner out on the river and take his head fishing guru out on the river and outproduce what they were doing with Lindy Tackle, and then they'd stock it in, and I'd do a seminar in the store and blah, 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 and the word would get out, and then I'd move on to the next place. Gary Roach and I did a lot of that together.
Wow.
You know, there was no money in it, but it was an incredible learning experience because I fished all kinds of different water in the process of doing that.
Right.
And then in 78, it was in early 75 when I sold the businesses and went full-time. In 78 is when S.E. Johnson Company called what I do this commercial, and they used me to introduce Deep Woods Off insect repellent to the world. And the product was a hit, the commercials were a hit, and they just saturated the airways with it coast to coast for the next 5 years. Well, the amount of exposure that came out of that and the amount of recognition in comparison to all of the other stuff I was doing was a joke by comparison.
Right.
And this one guy up at Duluth kept telling me, "Babe, you got to get into television." I kept telling him, "Jim, I don't have any friggin' money."
Right.
You know?
It sounds nice.
I don't know nothing about television. He said, "You can do this." The guy I did those commercials with told me the same thing. And one day, Kuzo called me and said, "Babe, come on up and have dinner with me. Got a proposition for you." I said, "What's that?" When we sat down for lunch, and he said, "I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to rent you the people and rent you the equipment to go out and shoot a television pilot or a couple of shows if you'd like, and then you can come back here and edit them, and once you get them all done and produced, I'll give you 6 months to go sell them before you got to pay me. Can you do it?" I said, "That's something I can do, Jim." And that's where it started. When we first did it, rather than a show, what I wound up doing for the first 3 years were 1 and 2 minute tips that ran on the 6 and 10 o'clock news as part of the sports block. And there'd never been anything like it before. And I mean, the first year we got it in 31 stations. The third year I had it in 117 stations across the United States.
And like you said,
I called every single television station.
Yeah.
In the United States that third year myself.
Yeah, that wasn't back in the day where you get a syndicate provider. You had to call each independently owned station and pitch it to them.
Every single one of them. I'll never forget one conversation with a guy, his name was Jack. He was a program director for WABC in New York City, a station owned by ABC. And I told him what I had to offer, and he said, "God, it sounds great." He said, "Sounds exciting. Send me its copy." So I sent it to him. I called him back a week or two later, something like that, to follow up. And he said, "Yes." He said, "As a matter of fact, I did look at it. It looks great." He said, "I love that stuff." And I said, "Well, Jack, perfect. Let's work out a deal here." And he said, "No." He said, "Babe," he said, "I'm from the upper Midwest." He said, "I grew up with this." He said, I understand it and I love it. But he said, "You got to understand something, man. The people in New York here," he said, "they don't fish, they hunt." I said, "Jack, not a problem. Man, hunters are fishermen, fishers are hunters. They're the same person." "No," he said, "Babe," he said, "they don't hunt animals." He said, "They hunt one another." I never forgot the conversation, and I just sat there with my mouth open. It would seem like a long time, and finally I said, "What in the hell do you live there for?"
You're right.
If that's what you feel. He said, "Well, this is as high up as I can go in my career field. I hope someday to get back to the upper Midwest."
Bless his.
I'll never forget that.
Did he ever?
They hunt one another, and I'd never at that time in life I had never been to New York City.
Right. Well, what advice do you give to people who maybe do live in this city, who want to get out and take their kids fishing or hiking or camping or hunting? How do you instill that love of the outdoors in a kid who's never been out there?
Well, I guess I don't try so much to instill it in kids as I do in families.
Okay.
If the dad fishes, It's easy for the dad to go off with his buddies and so forth, and harder to drag the kids along. If the dad and the mom both enjoy the outdoors, I don't care if they got sons or daughters, they're going to be doing it as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And as a family sport, I don't think that there's anything that offers what a good dose of the outdoors can offer, whether you're really into the consumptive end of it or not. I mean, some people can sit on a dock and drink a couple of beers, have the radio going, and suntan and watch a bobber, and if it goes down, great, and if it doesn't, great, and they claim they're fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And the next person has got to go out muskie fishing 14 hours straight a day without stopping to eat or drink like Petros does, with a jerkbait or whatever.
Right.
And that's his end of it. And fishing is a sport that anybody can do at any level, the most successful person being the person who has the most fun when they're doing it.
Right.
Not necessarily who catches the biggest or most fish, but just savors and enjoys the outdoors and let it soak into their soul. I don't think you've got to teach your kids much that there's a God or not if they spend enough time in the outdoors with you, because the outdoors does a great job of teaching that and shows them all sides of the coin, life and death both.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I think it becomes part of you, and it changes your being for the better. We try and show people why we do that, why I do it with my family. I've got 5 daughters, now I have 3 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and all 5 of my daughters fish. 3 of them have hunted for the last few years. The 4th one, my 26-year-old, decided this year the other kids are having too much fun. I got to do this. And we do things together as a family, and we love it. We've got a show coming up. I think it's on right now this week, actually.
On Versus.
On Versus, we run 5 times a week on Versus, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we run Saturdays and Wednesday on Fox Sports.
Okay.
They can go to our website, Winkelman.com, and wherever they live in the country, they can just click on, the website will walk them through what to do, and they can find all the stations and time slots in their locale, because there's 40 or 50 local stations, too, that carry our programming.
Right.
And then some other networks.
Nonstop. But you were saying, so you have a family show coming up.
Well, yeah, I think it's the one that's on this weekend. We had 4 of my daughters, my wife and I, and a grandson and a granddaughter out there.
Nothing like it.
And I mean, the screaming, the excitement, the crying, because the little year-and-a-half-old girl can't stand the life jacket. She wants it off. And all of those things we tried to capture. This is the essence of where every one of us started from.
Right.
This is the essence of what helps establish the roots. We went out as a family, and we had a great time together. We brought back a bunch of bluegills and cooked them up, and everybody savored in that end of it as well. But it wasn't about how many fish we caught.
Right.
It was about how much fun all of us had.
And
we were out on a pontoon boat.
Right. We're talking with Babe Winkelman. When you talk about the spirituality of being in the great outdoors and participating in the fishing and hunting that is there, when you talk about, you said there's no way you have to convince a kid there's a God if they're participating in this. And it's true. If you're in the woods or on the water, when the sun comes up or the sun goes down, a lot of questions of life come into focus.
Oh, man. I can imagine, or I can't imagine, growing up in the late Cabrini Green in Chicago,
right?
For example, it would be pretty easy to not believe in God.
Right.
When that was your kind of world, or Washington, D.C., where we have the highest murder rate, or so many places in the big cities. I feel so sorry for the kids, because so many of them have nothing to do. They have no jobs, they have no responsibility, they have no work, and they have no opportunity. Right. A lot of them don't even have any front or backyards.
Right.
Some of them have never even seen a green blade of grass in their life.
Mm-hmm.
We're to the point of this civilized society, or whatever the hell we call it, that is way tipped over the side.
Well, that said, where do you see the future of the outdoor lifestyle headed?
Well, I see the future of the outdoor lifestyle headed in a very positive way, because it is now, and there are millions of us who enjoy it, and almost all of which who are willing to share it. We've got a society and a civilization that is gearing everything to surrealistic opportunities. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't go bass fishing, you play a bass fishing game.
Right.
And you have instant gratification, and you don't have to have any knowledge, or you don't have to learn how to work, or you don't have to do anything else to do it. And I shudder to think yesterday or 2-3 days ago, I'm watching a newscast, and here's this little 14-year-old girl that had to have surgery on both arms for severe carpal tunnel because of texting. at 14 years old. Come on. Give her a ball and bat. Let her go hit a rock with a stick.
Right.
Let her kick the dog around and the ball with it. Run through the woods and chase chipmunks. Do something.
Right. You're right.
But to sit there and do 4,000 texts a day to you wear your arms out at 14, I worry so much about that sector of what's happening with civilization, because it's not that they don't get it. They're not getting a chance to get it.
Right.
They're not getting a chance to see what the outdoors can be for them as a family, even if they go on a hike together. Much less, I mean, yes, I would love to see every person in this country get the chance to fish and hunt at least one time, because I know it would change civilization.
It absolutely
I know
would.
it would change our country so much for the better for every person to understand it. But here's how bad it's getting, Mike, and this is the truth. About 2.5 months ago, I got a copy of an article out of the San Francisco newspaper. And this guy says, what in the heck is going on? I watch television, and here's all these shows out there, people killing animals, and they're hurting these animals. He said they claim that they're doing it as management for the animals' good, and they claim that they're eating all of the animals to taste good. But why don't they just go down to the local grocery store like the rest of us do and buy their meat where it's made, and then they could have meat to eat, and they wouldn't have to hurt any animals?
Buy the meat where it's made.
Buy the meat at the grocery store where it's made.
Yeah.
And that was in the San Francisco newspaper.
Everybody that eats meat has killed an animal, whether you've done it directly or had someone else do it for you.
For sure.
But that connection to your dinner, the connection to the renewable resource of wildlife, is what brings character, what brings responsibility, accountability, and appreciation of the gifts that we have. Babe Winkelman.
I mean, how far away can we get?
I know your fishing and your hunting is based on the concept of patterning. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and it's based on that, but it wasn't my idea.
Okay.
For example, you know what a lilac is, right?
Yep, I got them in my backyard.
When do they bloom around Chicago? Mid-May?
Yeah, middle of May.
Yeah, something like that. Happens every year, doesn't it?
Yep.
About the same way, about the same time, smells the same. It's a wonderful thing. If you start looking around, you'll realize that everything that happens in nature happens by patterns, is cyclical. It allows the plants and the animals to have a diversity of food to eat at any season of the year, winter, spring, summer, or fall. Some get more aggressive in winter, some get more aggressive in summer, depending upon what it is. But it's all designed to give them a balance. Let me give you an example with deer. When they come out of winter in our part of the country up here, I mean, they've just come through the toughest time of the year. Some of them get run down a bit and so forth. They need vitamins, proteins, and minerals to build their body back up. The does need those same kinds of things to not only build their body, but make sure they got enough milk to take care of the fawn or fawns, if they will, and get the job done. And that's the kind of stuff that's coming out. And then you can improve that a little bit nowadays. We found out by planting certain crops early in the year that helped them along with their health. A lot of brassicas and clovers and so forth, very high protein and mineral contents, and early in the year they really give the deer a big boost. Those are positive things coming out of the hunters again as well. Now those same deer come fall go after carbohydrates to put on a layer of fat, because by instinct, the ones that get the job done properly in fall, or by design, I should say, not instinct, are the ones that have the best opportunity to make it through the lean times of winter.
Right.
So they're seeking an entirely different kind of food. If there were no carbohydrates available to them at that time of the year, they'd have a hell of a time fattening for fall, but the whole design of it has seen to it that whatever anything needs is always there at the time of the year that they do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That is the foundation for why fish are where they are. They don't have a choice. They can only go and do what instinct leads them to do. They're guided by one instinct. It's called survival of the fittest. Mm-hmm. That means three things to a fish. It means eat as efficiently and effectively as you can. It means keep from being eaten as efficiently and effectively as you can. And it means at one time of the year propagating your species. Okay. In some cases, some things do it more than once a year. But, I mean, fish spawn typically once a year. Deer breed once a year. Coyotes and other things may do multiples. But by whatever the design is. Those are the only things that guide them. A walleye spawns a certain way. By design, it has to seek out certain kinds of bottoms and conditions in which to spawn successfully. It is programmed only for success. So it will find or keep going until it finds suitable situations by which to do it when it's looking in spring. They don't have a choice, nor does any of the other ones. They'll either get the job done or they will die trying.
Mm-hmm.
There is no handouts in nature. If you don't get the job done, you're dead. And nature says, good for you, because the game is survival of the fittest. Now, see, here's our humans again with all of our superior knowledge.
Right.
Denying the one instinct that it created the earth and allows it to live. We think we're smarter then. As soon as stuff gets tough, what do? We hold our hands out. Help me.
Mm-hmm.
Give me ADC. Give me welfare. Give me this. Give me. I'm a poor... crap. It's ludicrous.
Well, you're absolutely
By simple form, we're designed for perfection, too. I mean, you cut your finger, your body knows how to heal it. With the exception of the thought process, I guess I'm not sure what the heck we have it for. I'm glad we do,
For better or worse, right?
Boy, there's a lot of times it's not necessarily for better, in my opinion. That is the foundation of the pattern.
Right.
Why pattern fishing is when you understand, for example, with a fish, there's only 7 factors that give them opportunity today. Number 1 is what kind of a critter he is, the nature of the beast. A walleye is not a sunfish. A bass is not a muskie. They're different. A smallmouth is not a largemouth, even though they're both bass. They're different. Number 2 is what's for dinner. Number 3 is what's the shape of your world like in the bottom content, structure. Number 4 is what sits on the bottom cover. To structure and cover their edges, they work like highways. They sometimes work like holding areas for various things, but they're crucially. Number 5 is seasonality. Number 6 is daily and local weather, and that takes in moon sign as well. And number 7 is the presence of man. We come onto the scene and run outboards and boats and rip out shoreline vegetation so we can have a nice swimming area by our dock and this, that, and the other. And we alter their world, and then they got to put up with us and try and live with us.
Right.
Sometimes it forces populations in lake to go down because we take away so many of the things that give that lake life. But those are the only things that give a fish opportunity today to exist, period, are those 7 factors. And that's where people have got to spend a little time studying. You don't have to be a biologist, but you do have to realize the kinds of things fish eat, and how they go about their world seeking food. No different with a deer or a turkey, the factors that give him opportunity than there is for a fish.
Right. Learn where they sleep, learn where they eat, and adjust accordingly.
And learn how to get around in their world.
Right.
I mean, after a good snow, give it a day or two after a snow and go out in the woods and look around. Here's what you'll find. You'll find deer take trails almost always from places where they sleep to places where they go to eat. If you look a little closer, you'll find from where he sleeps, he'll have more than one route in and out. He will also, if you look closer, he'll have more than one place where he goes to eat, perhaps. But they'll take specific routes. Now, if you look a little closer yet, you'll see those routes go along edges an awful lot. Edges of a hillside, edges of a field line, edges of a fence line, edges of a swamp, edges of a brush line, etc. Fish do the same exact things underwater. All creatures use edges for whatever reasons. I don't necessarily understand why or how, but that's what they do, and it's ways that they get around. And we now know a walleye, for example, could leave the mouth of the Chicago River and swim all the way across Lake Michigan and go to a specific rock in Lake St. Clair in downtown Detroit and turn around and come back to the exact spot it left from, and we haven't got any idea how. But we know that they can because we've proven it with radio telemetry. Any kind of fish can.
Right.
But, I mean, so can other critters. The first time I was hunting deer or elk in the Tetons, We were on horseback up there, my buddy and I, and this one afternoon we just went exploring. It was super hot. There were no critters working. And about 2:30 in the afternoon, we crawled up on top of this mountain and glassed around a bit and so forth. And I said, Bill, do you have any idea where camp is? And he says, no, I don't. I said, how the hell are we going to get back there before dark? He said, easy, just drop the reins to the horse and let him go. And the horses took us back to camp by a different route by which we got there and knew exactly where camp was the whole time. I have no idea how.
Yeah.
How does a young baby loon born way up by the Arctic Sea know to fly to the Gulf of Mexico?
Right.
To winter. But they do.
Yeah, how does a wasp know to kill a grasshopper and lay it over their eggs before they go to die? It's
all part of the grand scheme, and it all works in patterns. Every aspect of nature, above water or below water, works by patterns. They're cyclical.
You need to start a college, I think.
I've devoted my life to studying this stuff.
Right.
And that's what excites me so much is the things that you can learn, the things that are there. They're wonderful. I mean, just the things to see. You don't have to travel the world. I mean, I don't have any desire to go to Asia or Mongolia or other places. I would like to go to Australia sometime. I probably will. But, I mean, there's so much to see in North America. Different kinds of land formations and ecosystems and geography, and that people have no idea what's here. I mean, to me, all of our backyard is the whole province of North America, Canada and the United States and down into Mexico. We were driving around the corner in Nevada here a number of years ago in Peoria, Nevada, and we dropped into this little valley, and there were rock protrusions coming out of the ground that looked like great big swirls of taffy. And they were fuchsias and purples and pinks and creams, and it was the most incredible thing. Never seen anything before like it or after like it, but here in this valley, God just felt like an artist that day or something. And I've seen natural bridges out west in the mountains where the wind has carved out a big rock bridge where, there's big tunnel underneath it. My father and I sat on a mountain in Black Canyon in Montana years ago, and we watched 22 bucks on a little mesa down underneath this great big natural stone bridge that went over top of that mesa. There's phenomenal things to see here, and phenomenal things to understand, and that's what turns my crank.